In history, and perhaps especially in military history, understanding what's happening will almost always be helped, no matter how clear the writing, by a well-designed map. Maps can always be found online, but it is sometimes useful to have the map under your eyes as you are reading, which is, I suppose, why maps are almost always included in books descriptive of major campaigns and battles. Simply to illustrate how variable is the utility of maps in books, I have chosen the final offensive against the German heartland as a point of comparison. Ian Kershaw's The End can afford a 2-page spread, but the map, because it is not the focus of the book, I suppose, is of no use in understanding the military action. Sir John Keegan was a preeminent military historian, and so, of course, his focus is on the campaign, and the large format edition of his The Second World War offers clear and useful maps. Nicholas Stargart's The German War, in my opinion, does not. The multi-tonal map, the low-cost alternative to colour, I find muddled, perhaps muddy, and what the map titled The Battle for Germany is trying to tell me is far from clear. Sir Max Hastings in Inferno is, I think, much better served by his cartographers, who give us more information than perhaps we really need. The double-page spread in Norman Davies's Europe at War 1939 to 1945 is useful for those with a shaky grip on the geography of the European continent. It gives us the whole picture and plenty of detail. The map in Michael Verenoff's The Third Reich at War rather underlines the value of the map in Davies's book. The information is there, but if your European geography is weak, you might struggle to locate the battlefield and, more importantly, understand it in terms of scale and distances beyond its boundaries. Compare the 2-page spread in Gerhard L. Weinberg's A World at Arms, which, like some other volumes, groups its maps, here at the end of the book, others at the front. I find this makes the maps less useful than placing them in the relevant text. Weinberg's map has scale and clarity and almost no useful information. It is barely more informative than a map in a standard atlas. Richard Overy's The Third Reich, a Chronicle, groups the maps at the front of the book. If, as you read, you flip back for clarification, you are confronted by this. The information is there, but the hashering, here diagonal, there horizontal, makes it really hard for me to focus on the maps for even a few seconds. Just me, perhaps. Overy's most recent, Blood and Bruins, which I will discuss separately, usefully combines both strategic overview and geographical context, though for military detail we must look elsewhere. You would expect a multi-volume publication that emphasizes pictorial history to get the maps right. And here is the campaign as depicted in one part of Time Life's 39-volume history. Of course, it lacks the geographic context. The area of the map is less than 400 by 300 kilometers. But to me, this is a model of clarity. I want to conclude by looking at what ought to be the solution to the widely variable quality to which add the fact that many books have no maps. And that solution ought to be a World War II atlas to be followed alongside your reading. Almost all atlases have significant narrative content to which substantial authors have contributed, but I want to look at them as a purely cartographic resource. There are a surprising number. National Geographic's Atlas of World War II is a slightly distinct case, describing itself as a cartographic history, which uses both vintage maps, that is, maps contemporary with the events, and newly created maps. Dorling Kindersley offers an atlas which, in their words, traces the epic history of World War II across the globe with more than 70 detailed maps. But as we will see, 70 is not an overly impressive number. The World War II Illustrated Atlas Campaigns, Battles and Weapons from 1939 to 1945, published by Amber Books, in its 2019 edition has a total map count over 160 and is competitively priced. The Rutledge Atlas of the Second World War by Sir Martin Gilbert offers 257 maps. And in an even more extreme case, Osprey Publishing covers just the war in Europe and takes 3 volumes to do it. Robert Kirkable authors the first volume on the first stages of the war in Europe, which perhaps regrettably they title Blitzkrieg, and the second on the Eastern Front. In the third volume, Stephen J. Zaloga maps the campaign in Western Europe. As you can see, these are richly produced books in slipcases with silk ribbons, and they offer more maps in more detail than single-volume works canvassing the whole war can hope to. But a word of caution. Critics have identified numerous small factual errors in this volume, The Eastern Front. Typically, the mislabeling of military formations. I don't think they damage the thing's value as a cartographic companion to one's study, but it is something of which you should be aware. I want to conclude by comparing 2 single-volume works that aspire to comprehensive coverage of the whole conflict. The Times Atlas boasts over 600 maps, diagrams, and illustrations. It is handsome. It is a coffee table atlas, large format, useful separate key that means you can interpret each map's symbols as you refer to it. And for me, it is really annoying. Here is an example of designers doing their thing, and their thing means that you can never be sure what the orientation of any map is going to be. Here is the encirclement of Berlin, and it's fine. There are smaller maps to give context, and north, as it were, is at the top of the page, but not always. The north-south logic is turned sideways, and you find yourself twisting your neck to see the thing as a familiar shape. Here, in the air war in Europe, laying Britain on its side, and here, the war in the Pacific, seemingly putting Australia north of New Guinea. Much more modest, cheaper, and free of any such affectation is Charles Messenger's World War II, a chronological atlas. Here is the map for the fall of Berlin. And this, frankly, is the atlas I reach for first. You cannot really understand history unless you get geography. And there are atlases for every period, every major event, and a good one is always, in my opinion and my experience, a sound investment.